So we will continue. Our last speaker is Michelle Marie Letelier. She's an artist from Chile, and she lives and works in Berlin. And her practice is very much about interdisciplinary research, and some things she's working in the last years, just long-term, slow-growing work, is the subject of slime. And we discovered that we both read this book, and I invite you to read it. It's fascinating. So she will present first, and then we have a conversation.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you all for being here and making it for the last session. Yes, my proposal actually, it's a new proposal, and it's called Gelata, and it's an exploration on the characteristics of the slime. What is slime? Well, first of all, what is Gelata? Why is it called Gelata? Gelata is a project proposal that has departed from the sheer characteristics of slime: wet, sticky, transparent, elastic. The term gelata was coined by marine biologist Stephen Haddock, referring to the gelatinous creatures in the ocean, whose interest reached a high point at the end of the 19th century, being a direct inspiration to and from art and design movements such as Art Nouveau. So this is something that inspired me, and during this residency, I saw a clear connection between this term, the makeup of the history of the textile industry, especially here in eastern Switzerland, and this approach of slime. So what is slime? The definition is not easy. According to Susan Bedlock, science journalist and writer whose book Slime has been the backbone of this project, as you mentioned, I want to read it a little bit because it's not easy to define slime. It has many approaches, but I think the easiest approach is from the physics perspective. If slime is a phenomenon and an idea, it is first and foremost a physical substance with chemical components and a structure that determines its biological, medical, and technical functions, and still defies definition. Slimes in organisms are aqueous hydrogels, water-caged in three-dimensional structure. The characteristic consistency of a slime corresponds to a specific physical behavior. Slimes are generally viscoelastic, uniting the properties of liquids and solid. So then it makes them as an in-between, just as textiles. It makes them flexible and able to alter their properties as needed. They're lubricants and adhesives. They're tailor-made for the species and organism. So with these ideas, I've been exploring the relationship that slime as a set of characteristics have with textiles. And for me, it's important to mention that throughout my practice, I've been more and more interested in having an ecological thinking, not only in terms of my own production as an artist with material. For me, it's very, very important to think what kind of material I'm using and why, but also a relationship with science, and not only science as well, but also other types of knowledges. So for me, it's been very, very important for this exploration that I would say the last 11 years I've been having with different scientists through conversations. And in this case, for me, it was clear that I wanted to work with EMPA to do a material exploration And also in terms of, from my artistic perspective, to try to make a contribution to the plastic problem, because this is like the most obvious direction that you can see. Try to work with bioplastics as a material that resembles slime, but also to think of an ecological approach. How can we think of trying to solve the plastic problem? So, also for me, the term slime departs from, well, I have to say a little bit of a background. I came through slime because I was collaborating with a marine biologist. For the last 7-8 years, I've been dealing with the salmon production, the salmon industry, and how that relationship between the global north and the global south in terms of neocolonialism is present in the salmon industry, especially between Norway and Chile. And within that exploration, I came to meet Karin Pittman, a marine biologist, a Canadian based in Norway, and she is specialized in the slime that covers the skin of the fish, and how important the slime acts as a barrier between the organism and the environment. So her approach is a positive approach in terms of trying to contribute to the salmon industry, which has a very negative reputation. But she's focused on the health of the fish. Instead of putting vaccines and antibiotics to the fish, she's trying to grab attention to the companies, saying how important is the slime of the fish. And with these ideas, we created a theater play, Salm Ethos, that has been presented in Basel. And together with Reactor Theater, we created this it was like a performative theater play with 5 actors that whose story evolves into a real story case about a researcher, a scientist that discovered a virus that was provoked by Norway and exploded and provoked a crisis in Chile. So, and this work, our idea was to create the costumes using bioplastics. So we created 2 sets, one for the actors and one for this installation. And the installation set has been shown last year here in the Kunstmuseum St. Gallen. But for the actors, the set for the actors was really, really very problematic because, of course, we tried to work on a bioplastic based on gelatin and agar-agar. And for the actors to move and to rehearse in like the most hot days of the year, it was really, really challenging. So with that problem in mind, I came to TaDA trying to explore, maybe not solve that problem because it's very challenging, but to explore concepts such as breathability, flexibility, elasticity, viscoelasticity, water repellent, hydrophobic materials, and so on. Something else important to mention for me, it's been very, very important to be close to a body of water as the Bodensee. This has been my everyday inspiration, very important for me because the more, along these 3 months, I've been coming to reflect that the body of water is also a tissue, a tejido. How do you say it? In Spanish, it's called tejido. It's this tissue. It's the sense of like primordial, slime, primordial ooze, but also the water as a textile. So for me, it was really, really important, and also like the connection through the slime that can makes us reflect of our own origins as aquatic species. This is, for me, the core of this project, our own connection with the water systems. We come from the ocean, we come from the water, And how amazing for me is to think how did we evolve into being terrestrial beings. But I think through slime we can remember our origins as aquatic species, especially in the times that we're living, global warming and the change of the tides, that an anthropologist that I heard that mentioned this word neo-amphibiousness. We are living in a time where we are experiencing a neo-amphibiousness era, meaning that liminal creatures between the water and the earth are being transformed. Some are dying, and also some are being created. Some new species are being mutating. So this is all about, like a geological time. So it's very difficult to think about this in this right now, in this moment. But with all these ideas, I've been exploring, for example, terms of elasticity. And I have to really thank Luba from the Textile Museum. When she, in our conversations, she told me, well, but why don't you explore, rather than elasticity through a material, you can explore elasticity through the structure of material. So that gave me this idea of really exploring the history, some elements of the history of Eastern Switzerland. These pieces, for example, correspond to the early 20th century, which also recalls the time where gelata was coined, and possibly a relationship. I mean, this is all a speculation, but for me it's a draw of inspiration, possibly a relationship between the creation of these pieces and the interest at that time of gelatinous creatures under the ocean. You can see a little bit of round shapes, different kinds of solution towards elasticity through structure. For example, might be obvious, but for me it was super interesting when Lua mentioned these suspensors from the 17th century, how they solved the problem of elasticity in wearables, in outfits, way before the plastics came. And as you can see here, these are strings of springs. And for me, it was interesting to think, like it might be super simple, but how can we think of other ways of solving elasticity in textiles or in costumes, in clothing, rather than thinking of lycra or more toxic or contaminant materials. These are some examples that I gathered thanks to my research in Sitterwerk. Really basic ideas of elasticity through structures, through meshes. And as you can see, I'm very interested in working with copper. For me, copper is a material that I've been using my whole life, really, because it's a biographical material. I grew up in the biggest open pit copper mine in the world, in the Atacama Desert. For me, copper is part of a landscape. And throughout my work, depending on the projects I've been doing, I've been using copper in different ways, applying electricity, of course, as an electricity conductor, but also thinking, in this case, I'm really thinking of copper in terms of color. And talking about color today really made me think of that. So with these ideas of a structure, elasticity through structure, I've been doing these exercises, constructing a little samples of elastic structures using my previous approach with bioplastics and copper, and how they behave with bioplastic again, and with gravity, how they behave with weight. I've been using only not only, like mostly natural material, silk, cotton. And in this case, I had this idea of replastifying it. You can see over there this test that I did. Again, thinking of how can we have a relationship between textile and bioplastic or hydrogel. Here you can see a better relationship, chromatic relationship between what has been inspiring me every day and the use of copper, for example. As you can see, my color palette is very, very restricted because it's very difficult for me to work with colors. I really need to have a reason to work with a certain color. And in this case, it has been very obvious to me to work with copper, not only because I love copper, but because copper reacts through time when I plastify it, meaning that copper oxidizes and becomes this transparent, watery, greenish, bluish material, or this bonding, this composition. And for me, it relates directly to a watery system or to a body of water. So when I came to the first meeting I had with the EMPA scientist, Gordon Herrick, and his team, I told them, okay, I've been working with a combination of gelatin and agar-agar for the last 2 years. I really want to work with a new material. And then they say, well, why don't you, instead of creating a new material, improve your technique? And they had a point. So they suggested me to work with alginate, which I've been working before, but I was a little bit, I wasn't convinced for the work that I did in the past, so I started to work with alginate. And this is just an idea for you to understand alginate, that is, it comes from a brown algae that is present in the wild in many, many areas, coastal areas in the planet. Alginate, or brown algae, in this case, brown algae, they extracted from the wild, which could be having, in the present, negative consequences or negative approach, or the urgent need to regulate. So this is just an idea, and it requires a lot more research. So, yeah, I've been spending most of my residency experimenting with different materials, thanks to, I have to thank Martin Leuthold, who gave me a lot of meshes, and metal meshes, banana mesh, and also cotton, silk, a very nice silk that I got from Filtex. I have to thank them as well. And I have to thank to the scientists that they gave me a lot of materials to make the tests. So I can detail you some of the materials. Mostly they're bio-based, but yeah, I work with gelatin fish gelatin. So. Fish gelatin, agrospray, guar, carbogel, pectin, carrageen, xanthan, water glass, chitosan, macrogol, vinyl, tannins, cellulose, and beeswax, and some others, but yeah, these are the most important. And yeah, it's been a discovery because some of them, they behave really well. Some of them I had to, yeah, it was a nice test, but it's not useful for my purposes now. But it's been, as you can see, it's important for you to see and touch, because it's important to touch and smell. And so, yeah. And as you can see here, there's an obvious color combination that resembles the skin of the fish. In the left, you can see the skin of the salmon. And these are tannins. And what fascinates to me is that I can resemble the skin or some poetics of marine creatures or aquatic creatures using materials that have nothing to do with them. In this case, for example, these are tannins, and you can see the relationship in terms of color with seaweed or salmon skin. And the same with copper. Once they are reacting within a certain amount of time, they can resemble an aquatic material or an aquatic atmosphere. Another surprise test that I just did last week in Tempa, we copper plasma coated some seaweed and some mesh. It's been a challenging for me. I would love to have to work with copper mesh, but they are really, really expensive in the market. So yeah, we had this idea of plasma coating this mesh, and it became a copper mesh. So I'm really, really happy, and this is just the beginning. I'm gonna do more the next week. And unfortunately, they're at EMPA, so I couldn't bring them on, but I'm really, really happy with this result. And some ideas I've been having, not only, of course, trying to solve the problem for the costumes, for the theater play, but also thinking of slime as a sculptural device. And so these are just models, little models I've been doing in the studio, trying to understand the behavior of slime in terms of gravity, weight, elasticity. And this has given me some ideas of working sculpturally. And it was funny because I was looking for a bigger space to work. I went to Textiles Spinnerei, and I spoke with Martin. And then he said, okay, tell me your idea. And I started to tell him the idea, and he was like, okay, so I have some similar ideas, let's collaborate. So now we are beginning a collaboration together, trying to, probably we're gonna have some performative output where we will explore slime within a time frame. Because for me, it's also important that the public can understand the behavior of a slime. And this has to do with movement, with viscosity, with motion. So, yeah, so we are working together right now and trying to make a sculptural approach, performative approach. So, yeah, the last thing I wanted to say is that with all these ideas, and I've been really interested also in reflecting on the fact of the use of biomaterials, not only in an artwork, but in general, in clothing as well. What does it mean to work with bio-based materials in terms of preservation, in terms of conservation of textiles, for example, but also conservation of artworks? This is like a contradiction, and I would love to explore more into this contradiction, because this, I find this very important in order to really shift the mindset on these times, ecological times, that we need to have in order to be more humble as human species. You know, like sometimes it's not necessarily to preserve materials forever, especially the times we're living. So I hope with this start of this project, I can make a little contribution about this thinking and the plastic problem, of course. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this inspiring journey through slime and all these different aspects. Maybe as a starting point, I have the impression, really, you point out to a kind of a material revolution which is happening.
Absolutely.
And so there are two aspects which I think could be interesting to talk about. First, the more the potential of slime in a really in a useful, in a functional way, and also the potential of slime in your artistic practice. Maybe we can start first with because you were talking that you explored, you wanted to improve your recipe, but also the dream would be to create new materials. Where do you see the potential?
Well, when I started to think about slime, I naturally arrived to I wanted to create a material that resembled slime without being a slime, of course. And then I landed into the bioplastic and the whole revolution that is happening right now in terms of material research and exploration in order to solve the plastic problem. And this is fascinating because there's so many people working right now trying to improve and trying to create a material that can replace plastic. And this has been fascinating because it's been from people from so many disciplines are working with trying to make contributions to this problem. And I think it's important because it's all open source. It's a dynamic that is open and collaborative. People are really working hard to solve this plastic problem. So what can I contribute as an artist? I'm not a scientist, I'm not a designer. I think my contribution could be more poetic. And that's why I would like to contribute from this perspective of thinking of our origins of our species and the origins of all the biosphere, not only us humans, and our intimate connection with the biosphere, the environment, but also think of that we have slime inside of us. We came from we had slime outside of us in one period of the millions of years ago. And this for me has been fascinating to think of a geological time, to deep time.
Yeah, it's a fascinating aspect, which also Susanne Wedlich points out, that the slime is always ambivalent.
Yeah.
On one hand, we reject slime and we say, oh no, I don't want to touch this, I don't want, it's dangerous, which can be also a healthy reaction.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's the origin of life. We come from water and we come from slime, we have slime inside. But maybe you can elaborate more in your artistic practice. What does it mean? You mentioned performance, but also installations. Can you give an example of where you try to translate and find a poetical language for all these very complex and also very complex issues?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned before, this is a totally new project. Normally, I work with long-term projects, like 7-8 years. And throughout my whole career, I've been working mainly with natural resources, meaning mostly minerals, until I came to work with salmon, which is a living natural resource in the capitalistic terms. So this opened to me a whole new spectrum in terms of ethical thinking and philosophical thinking. And within that spectrum, I would love to work with slime, which is for me a little bit liberating because I don't have to work with one resource or one material, because the slime is present everywhere. So the way I see it maybe in the next years is an exploration on materials, but also on storytelling. because there's so many stories that have to do with slime, and so many organisms and forces of nature that use slime for their own survival. So for me, I see it as a storytelling in the future.
Yeah. So art as a form of finding narratives for
exactly.
Things we cannot grab, especially the slime, which is like jumping away.
Yes.
And so maybe you can talk us about the EMPA, and you mentioned that it's for you, it's really a starting point. Do you want to collaborate further on with this with the EMPA or other?
Yeah, I think in the future, if this goes successful, I would love to apply electricity on these textiles, meshes, but also maybe working with seaweed. I've been working with electricity before, with copper, but yeah, in this case it would be another approach, probably some in the direction of soft robots, wearables, using sensory technology. Yeah, I think that could be a direction. But also, I mean, this is just a starting point. It's going to take a while to refine a new recipe that can hold these slimy properties.
Yeah, but it's still fascinating. I think there is a revolution going on.
Absolutely,
now. Yes, maybe I want to open up and for the public. Maybe you have a specific question about Michel's work. Did you touch the samples?
Yeah, if you want to come and touch, please do, because it's important. You can feel it with your skin. Yeah.
So, no? Shall we do a short wrap up, or? Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
It was really fascinating.